Hi, welcome to the Get Ready with God podcast. My name is Julie Taylor and I am your host, and I am not God. Obviously, I'm not an expert. I'm not even a scriptorian. I'm literally just a girl sitting in front of a microphone, hoping God is real. The Get Ready with God podcast is the daily devotional podcast to help you see divinity in every day. I went on a hike this week. Let's get our collective, oh boy, out of the way. Of course, I got millions of metaphors and lessons taught to me by nature and divinity in the mountains. I love hiking. I love being outside, and I love doing really hard things. And that's what this hike was. We summited Mount Timpanogos. I took my children and my dad. My oldest and I have summited that mountain together when he was 5. I took him on that hike when he was 5 because I'm clearly not okay. I was not okay then. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you know what? We did it and great memories. So I guess YOLO, baby. But he and I summited it again. My girls and my dad made it all the way to Emerald Lake, which was kind of the plan, which is still a 10-mile round trip, rigorous elevation gain, crazy hike for them to do. We all had a great time together, and it was really, really, really challenging. And I'm really proud of my kids for doing it. I kind of forced them. I definitely bribed them to do this. And I have no regrets. I want them to know that they can do hard things, and they did it because they can and they're capable, and I want them to know that. Anyways, it was a really, really beautiful day of hiking. It took us about 12 hours round trip with our whole crew, and it was extremely challenging. It was really, really hard. So now, because this is my podcast, I'm going to tell you all the lessons that I learned. And there's nothing you can do about it. Actually, you can stop listening. Please don't do that. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave positive reviews. Thank you. Love you. Okay, I'll try to make this worth your while. Here's the thing. What happened was we started hiking in the middle of the night. So it was pitch black, and we had our headlamps on, and we were going up the trail. And I was in the lead, and I made the rookie mistake. So our first rule of hiking is you only hike as fast as your slowest hiker, and you don't leave people behind. And you don't make them feel bad for being a slow hiker, and you only encourage them and cheer them on, and you never say anything about the pace at which they are hiking. Positivity only, support only. And I was in the lead, and it was pitch black. My 2 older kids were right behind me, and they were talking, and so I just assumed that our whole group was together. So I just kept charging up the mountain. And it got to a point where I tried to say something to my 10-year-old, and she didn't respond, so I stopped and turned around, and I realized that my 10-year-old and my dad had fallen behind, and they weren't with us. And so I was like, okay, let's stop and wait for him. So we were stopping, and I was just chatting, and we were there for a while, me and my 2 oldest kids, and they still weren't coming. And because it's pitch black, you can usually see people's headlamps even when they're really far away. And I kept looking down the mountain, and I couldn't see them. And I started to get a little bit worried. And luckily, we were in a place in the hike where there was cell reception, because we brought radios, but we hadn't exchanged them yet because it was pretty close to the beginning of the hike. And so I was able to call my dad, and sure enough, they had taken a wrong fork, and he had a map with him, and was his career, was making maps. He's very good with map. And so he was like, oh, we've gotten off the trail. And so we started to make a plan of how we were going to get back together and where we were going to meet up. Anyways, so my 10-year-old was lost in the pitch black in the mountains on a trail that has a lot of animals. I mean, this is mountain territory. So, and it was really interesting because I was completely calm, and it's because she was with my dad, and I trust my dad more than I trust myself, specifically in this type of setting. My dad is very good with maps. He's very good with outdoors. He's very survivalist. He could win Survivor. I stand by that. I trust him more than I trust myself. If my daughter was to be lost in the mountains, I would rather she be lost with my dad than lost with me. The amount of calm that I felt was kind of remarkable to me, because it was a scary situation. It's just I'm telling it now and you're like, oh, everything was fine. But when it's pitch black in the middle of the night in the mountains and you can't see anything and you don't know where your child is, that's a recipe for scary. It took about 40 minutes, but they found us and we met back up and everything was fine and everyone is fine. It took multiple phone calls and some navigation from my dad, and Lex had to hike an extra mile, and she was running and she was scared, and it was a thing. It was a thing. And the rest of the hike, I just couldn't stop thinking about how calm I was because she was with my dad and because I trust my dad so much. And it just made me think about God, and how it would be if I could get to a place where I trust God more than I trust myself. And the peace that comes from that of really, really actually trusting God more than I trust myself and trusting God with my children. I mean, we talk a big game of like everyone's on their own path and God has them. God has your kids. I think people say that a lot in the Christian world of like, hey, you don't need to worry. God has them. God has them. But that doesn't feel great, when you're actually stressed or worried about your kids. I don't think just saying like, oh, God has them. It's not like we just like check out and don't worry. And I still was worried about Lex, but I just had this overwhelming sense of calm because I was like, yeah, but she's with my dad. Everything will be okay because she's with my dad. And it just made me really want to get to that place with God, not just for my kids, where I can actually trust God of say like, hey, God has them. And I trust God more than I trust myself. So my kids are going to be okay. But even with my own life and my own experience and my own detours, and when I'm lost in the woods, when I'm lost in the mountain in the dark, to have that relationship with God where I could be at peace and just think, you know what though? It's going to be okay because God. It just felt like a really practical representation of kind of this abstract concept of trusting God. And it gave me an example, I think a tangible example of what it might feel like to get to that level of calm and peace and trust with God. And I'm definitely not there yet, but it just gave me something to work for, I think, of, okay, if I feel this much peace with my child lost in the dark in the woods, what else could I have peace through, And the other part of the metaphor that I thought was really poignant to me is that it was my mistake that kind of got her lost. And not because I meant to, it was just an honest mistake of hiking too fast and not turning around and looking for her and not following the rule that we have in our family of only hike as fast as the slowest hiker. I just thought that was so representative of parenting in general, but also just life. Like even when we're trying, we're doing our best and we don't mean to make the mistake or we don't mean to do the wrong thing, God will still be there. God will still fix it for us and pick up the slack and make up the difference and bring peace through navigating the consequences of whatever it is that we caused, even when we don't mean to. So that was the first lesson of the hike. There's going to be another one that I'll share with you in the next episode. You didn't really think I was going to hike for 12 hours with my children and summit a mountain and not talk about it 5 times on the podcast, right? There's too many lessons there. There's too many lessons. Even when you're not insufferable, I'm insufferable and will find metaphors and lessons in every single thing that happens. But you don't even have to be insufferable like me to see the lessons in a hike like this. So I just wanted to share that and just think, hey, maybe that is what it feels like. Because we always say things like, hey, trust God and build a relationship with God and trust God more than you trust yourself. And God has you. We say all these things, but what does that actually look like in practice? And I felt like I had this example very tangibly given to me of I trust my on earth dad, my real dad, more than I trust myself. And he had my child lost in the mountains. And because of that trust and because of that relationship that's been cultivated with him, and because I know his power, my dad's skill sets and my dad's power, and I know it also tangibly, I was completely at peace through a really scary time. My trust with God is more abstract. My understanding of his power is more abstract. The same rules could apply if I keep working at it and if I keep getting there to get to the point where I trust God more than myself. And so I trust what happens in life and the journeys people need to go on, including my kids. When that trust is there, peace will be there too. And that sounds pretty nice because life is hard and I need some peace, Okay, love you. Have a great day. Bye.